Hey everyone, today I want to talk about the long-term effects of TBIs on either yourself or your loved ones. In prior discussions, we've talked about the fact that brain injuries are permanent. And in the litigation world, we hear insurance company attorneys always say, oh, well, concussions, the symptoms go away after a very short amount of time and there's no permanent effects. And actually nothing could be further from the truth. In fact, close to 30% of those folks who receive concussions, which is considered a mild traumatic brain injury, suffer lifelong consequences. The reason why it's so troubling is that the initial, what we would call the acute phase, which shows some of the symptomatology that occurs, will fade over time, but then there's a resurgence later on in life when cognitive deficits start to rear their ugly heads, things like memory loss, the ability to perhaps perform mathematical functions, reading comprehensions, and so forth. So there has been an exciting area of science which has tried to identify the long-term effects. Two of the ones that have been discussed the most are the propensity for folks with a mild traumatic brain injury to be at risk for early onset dementia or Alzheimer's. Now, some of this was conjecture and theory, but there has been some new research which seems to disclose that this is actually true, and it refers to genetic testing. There is a gene that people can be carriers of, and it's called the APOE4 gene. There's two copies of it, and a person may have one or both of the copies of that genetic marker in their bodies. So, and they actually have now called it the concussion gene, because if a person sustains a concussion and they carry one copy of the gene, they are 10 times more likely to develop Alzheimer's disease during their lifetime. And if they have both copies, which is a much smaller, thankfully, segment of the population, then they're at risk 19 times more so to develop Alzheimer's disease. So this is important because if you have a loved one that is a TBI patient, it is probably a good idea to have this genetic testing done for this APOE4 marker so that there is some predictability as to what their future life may look like, so that you can then educate yourself regarding what sorts of problems may arise and how to handle them at the earlier stages. But there's also an additional factor that I think is really important that really has nothing to do with current TBI patients. And this is as it relates to sports for children. If they are going to play a contact sport, such as football or soccer or anything where they would be using their head or receive contact to their head, it's probably a good idea to go ahead and have this genetic testing performed and identify the APOE4 and determine if they are a carrier or one or both of the copies of that, because it may impact your decision or influence your process as a parent as to whether or not you'll let your child play those sports. I sure hope this video has been helpful, and we'll talk again soon. Thank you.